After peaceful protests wrapped up, we did see yet another night of violent clashes between demonstrators and federal officers. The acting DHS Secretary, Chad Wolf, told reporters officers were trying to protect the federal buildings and that their presence is necessary here because the criminal element that targets the buildings.
What is occurring in Portland in the early hours of every morning is not peaceful protesting. These individuals are organized and they have one mission in mind: to burn down or to cause extreme damage to the federal courthouse and to law enforcement officers.
Not everyone agrees with that perspective. A doctor I talked with who has spent lots of time on the front lines said it's the feds who are out of control. Here's what he had to say.
I have seen civil disobedience and acts of mild civil unrest, but the escalations that we have seen on a nightly basis and the unprovoked attacks from Portland Police Bureau and new federal agents who are not identified on the streets are far in excess of these small civil disobedient acts.
Last night, hundreds gathered at the federal courthouse. There was a mom's group, and then there was dad's group as well. And things were peaceful for a time, but then things eventually went downhill. Around 12:30 this morning, police say, as the crowd started to damage the federal courthouse, federal officers came out, and as one went to arrest someone, several from the crowd threw the officer off that person. At other times in the night, federal officers used tear gas and pepper spray to push the crowd back, and some demonstrators shined lasers at their faces and used strobe lights as well. Windows were broken at the courthouse and at Portland's City Hall. Portland police say they did not use any tear gas and did not make any arrests last night. Any of that was done by the federal police.